This video is about exchanging the rubber parts in the tape mechanism of a Beocord 9000. I will show how to get to the belts and how to exchange the idler wheel rubber tires. For more information, please visit my blog at beolover.blogspot.com or go to my website at www.beolover.com. Here you see the tape mechanism taken out and flipped around, and so you see here immediately the flat belt that goes around the flywheel and the square belt that goes around the pulley that drives the reel discs. And so if one wants to exchange the belts, or typically when you get a Beocord 9000 in this day and age, then these belts here have simply melted away, and so you will find some black goo but no belts. But anyway, if you want to get at the belts, the first step is to take off this shield here and then take out this triangular plate that holds the flywheel down. So I'm going to take out the shield now. It's just held down by two screws up there, and then once these screws are out, we turn the mechanism around, and then there's one more on the side here, and then the shield comes off. There we go. Now we can remove the two screws that still hold that triangular plate. Okay, now you see the flywheel, and I forgot to videotape this, but now you can take out the belts, and then this flywheel can simply be pulled up vertically and put aside, and then what you see is this. The flywheel that came out of this bushing, so the shaft of the flywheel sticks through to the other side, where it becomes the capstan of the tape drive mechanism. This plate here that holds the reel discs that are responsible for taking up the tape or feeding it in, and these reel discs now, they are driven by this pulley that connects to a idler wheel down here that can be connected either on this side or on this side, depending on the position of some smaller idler wheels that are below this plate. We will take out now this plate, and then you can see this mechanism. And then we will exchange the rubber tires that are on these idler wheels. The first step is to take out this clutch arm. So we need to first remove this spring and then this retaining washer. They push out very easily with a small screwdriver. So it's good to hold them in place with a finger, otherwise they tend to vanish very quickly. So now we can pull out the clutch arm. Here you can see that idler wheel that drives the reel discs. Let's have a quick look under the mounting plate for the reel discs. So the reel discs, they stick up through the take mechanism on the other side. So this is the feed in one, and this here is the take up reel disc. And they are driven by these wheels, friction wheels that are below deck here. Now these friction wheels, they connect to these idler wheels, and then finally to the idler wheel that is on the clutch that is missing in this picture. So the clutch goes in here, and then the clutch wheel manages to drive this reel disc or this reel disc depending on the operational situation of the tape deck. So it's pretty obvious, for the proper operation of the tape mechanism, the friction needs to be sufficient between the idler wheels and those drive wheels for the reel discs. And when the mechanism ages, this rubber here gets hard, and then the friction is lower, and then you have a situation like where fast forward or rewind doesn't work very well anymore. Okay, let's take the mechanism apart to get to these idler wheels so we can exchange the rubber tires. The first step is to take this spring off here from this arm, and then we can start removing this mounting plate for the reel discs. So now let's take out the plate that holds the reel discs. So for this we remove the 4 screws that hold it down. Here we go. And now we need to loosen up all this here in order to be able to pull this plate out. So I We're still a little bit in the learning process here, but the best way is to simply remove these retaining washers, this one and these two screws, and then all this becomes loose and we can pull this plate out. But at this point I tried to leave this here in, this retaining washer. So you'll see now that after I remove these two screws, I try to pull these arms out of the T-bar here, and while I'm successful on this side, it was too difficult over here, and so I ended up then removing this clip. And then you will see after this it comes out very easily. So if you do this, I would simply remove this clip and that clip and those two screws, and everything will fall apart in a coordinated way when you lift out the mounting plate for the real discs. See, now everything is loose, and so this thing comes out. So here you see the two real discs, and these are the drive wheels that spin them. And so this is one of the idler wheels that is used to connect to these drive discs and either select this one or this one to spin depending on forward or backward motion of the tape. So here in the cavity there are two of those idler wheels, and they are on one axle, and one can simply pull the top one off here and the little washer, and the larger one that comes in from the bottom. So we open up the cassette holder and then we can just pull it out to the bottom. Now here is another washer, and when I did this here the first time, the washer was stuck to this bushing from below, but then when I put everything back together and I thought I was done, I lifted up the mechanism and I found this little washer. So it took me a little while to figure out that it belonged here. But anyway, when you pull out this larger wheel, I would have a look if that washer is sticking to the bushing and secured. So if you count it, you realize that there are 4 idler wheels, and indeed when one orders these tires from Dylan of beoworld.org, then you get 4 of them. So let's see how we can install them. Let's do the clutch first. So it works fairly well to jam a small screwdriver into the rubber and then pull it out, and then you can force the new tire on there. It can be a little bit difficult to get it in there because it needs to be aligned with this groove. But you see, after you tug it a little bit, then it finally gives up and allows you to push it in. So it's pretty much the same process for those 2 wheels that were taken out already. But this one here we have to remove from the carrier plate. So I'm going to show you this one. So again, we need to remove the retaining washer, and then we can pull the wheel out. Again, there is this small washer that reduces the friction, and now the wheel comes out. And now we can exchange the tire. It's pretty much the same process, it's just a little bit more difficult because the wheel is smaller. That requires a little bit more force to get the screwdriver in. Alright, it came off, and now we can put the new one on. And now we can put the little wheel back in. Alright. So let's not forget the friction reducing washer. And then the clip. So it works pretty well with some long nose pliers to squeeze it back onto the shaft. Okay, now it's time to put these two small wheels back in here. And as I said before, there is one of those friction reducing washers on this shaft, so if it didn't come out, make sure that it's really on there so that it's still on this bushing. So when I filmed this, I wasn't aware of this, but anyway, it goes in from the bottom, and so you can just stick it in there through the cassette drawer. Can be a little bit difficult to do this with your fingertips, but here we go. And then the other wheel is simply stuck on top of the shaft. And of course there's another washer. Okay, now it is time to put the real disc carrier back into the cavity. And so there are a couple important things we need to consider before we can insert this carrier plate. So let's have a look here. So the first thing we need to look at are these brake pads on the feed spool, and then there's also a brake pad here for the take-up spool, and this brake pad needs to be on the inside of this wheel here. This photo here shows what happens if you do not consider that this brake pad must be inside the wheel that goes in here. So when I got this tape deck and took it apart, the reason why I took it apart and decided to install the new rubbers for the idler wheels here was that it would not fast rewind anymore properly, or very slowly. And so it turns out that when this pad here is bent, like you see it here, that one of the two possible fault mechanisms is that the fast rewind doesn't work anymore well. Another manifestation of this here can be that when you press play, then the tape deck stops after about 1 second of playing because the take-up spool does not take up the tape, and then the tape deck thinks we're at the end of the tape, and so it stops. So it's very important that you make sure that this pad here is up vertical so that it can go inside this wheel of the real disc carrier. Okay, enough of all these warnings. So now it's time to put this carrier back in. And so the first step is that this bar here needs to go into this slot that is underneath. And then you simply place it loosely on top here, and then we need to turn the drive around and make sure that this pad here goes inside the wheel. Okay, here we go. Okay, now it's time to make sure that this pad is inside the wheel here, and I apologize for the whiteout. I had to increase the intensity so we can see something on the other side. So here I'm turning it around, and now I'm gonna push the wheel back a little bit to make sure that the pad is on the inside. Here we go. Now we can turn it back around. And now we put the screws back and the retaining washer. Pretty much the same, like just in reverse. And now we put the arm back in that drives the idler wheels. Don't forget the spring. And now finally the screws again. Let's not forget the retaining washer for the arm. And here comes the clutch. And another retaining washer. And now we can put the flywheel back in. So there are also washers on the flywheel. There are two, right? They need to be in this order, and then the flywheel goes into this bushing. Now we can put the belts back in. First the flat belt, and then the square belt for the pulley. And here comes the flywheel cover. And the shield. And the third screw. Well, now you know how to exchange the rubber parts in the tape mechanism of a Beocord 9000. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.